Hi, it's Tony here again. I have not posted a video for quite a while. I've been busy, um, with lots of things. And today I thought I'd give a little showcase of something that I've been working on quite a bit the last couple of months, and that is a Cessna 208 Grand Caravan panel for X-Plane. The long story short is I started off with this is the Caranado Grand Caravan, as you probably guessed. There's not very many caravans out there, although I did see there's one in development on the org forums recently. It's a shame there's not more different models. I did try the G1000 model, but I can say that in my experience, and I think in lots of others based on what I've read since, the G1000 Caranado Caravan is well, I won't say what I want to say. It's not a very good aircraft. It's full of bugs. I couldn't get it to even fly properly. The engine was underpowered. There was warnings and cautions remaining that couldn't go off. The starter would stay engaged and you couldn't get it to go off. And yeah, so luckily for me, I managed to get a refund, and so I was very reluctant to buy another Caranado aircraft, but I had a couple of people recommend this one to me, and although not perfect, I can't say that I'm disappointed with the analog version of the 208. So here we are. Needless to say, it's taken quite a lot of work, and there's still a little bit more to do. But this is the bulk of the work completed now, in terms of instruments. So what we've got here is the left-hand side. This is another one of my dual panels. So we've got the engine in the radio instruments I'll show in a minute on a right-hand side panel, and we have this left-hand side, which is the main six-pack and cluster that would normally be sitting directly in front of the pilot. So let's have a little skirt around the panel. At the very top there you see the annunciator panel, with all the different annunciators for the Caravan. I've also incorporated into that annunciator panel some extras on top of what's built into the sim. Those of you that have owned or do own Caranado aircraft will know that they are not the most detailed when it comes to systems. So there's a number of systems that are not modelled accurately to the real world aircraft, and you can figure out what they are in a lot of cases by looking through the POH or other material related to the real aircraft, and figure out how those systems are actually intended to work. So there's some warning horns for fuel select, and some of the logic for the some of the other annunciators is not modelled that accurately. So I've changed some of that, and I've managed to get that to work as per the real POH. So that's good. Took a little bit of work. For anyone that's worked on an annunciator panel, you'll know how involved that is. Trying to get that. It's not so much the graphics of the annunciator panel, it's more the logic behind trying to figure out, one, when they're meant to come on, and two, how many different data refs you need to use or combine to be able to get that annunciator to come on at the right time and for the right thing. So let's go ahead and power up so that we can see some of these instruments working. I've been talking about these. See, just on the left here is a little pop-up panel. So I've got a number of pop-up panels just before we do quickly power up. So there's that main one, which is the main electrical switch panel. For anyone that's familiar with a Caravan, there's a switch panel on top of the circuit breaker panel just over to the left, not part of the main instrument panel, but just mounted on the side wall of the aircraft, just in front of the door. So this is that switch panel that sits on top of that. So you're not using it all the time, so and it does take up quite a bit of space. So I thought I'd make that a pop-up panel. So you just touch on the screen there in the corner, and the panel pops up. You flick what switches you want to switch, and then you can just hide it out of the way again. There's another one just down the bottom here, which is the anti-ice panel. Didn't quite have room for that as well. So again, most of the switches you're not operating all of the time, so you can pop up, do what you need to do with that one, and just make it hide again. It's really easy and quick to touch the pop-up panels. When we get onto the right-hand side panel, I do have a pop-up for the overhead as well. And also on this panel, in the top right-hand corner there, you see there's another little pop-up there for the whiskey compass, which I tend to put on all of my panels because they tend to sit a little bit higher up than the actual instrument panel itself. So there's the whiskey compass. Turn that off for a moment. So let's bring the main switch panel on then and turn the battery on. And you see the annunciator panel come on there briefly. And I don't know if you guys can hear on the video the gyros beginning to spin up there. That's because the sim is running. That's coming from the sim, that gyro. That's not in the Air Manager panel itself. So on the annunciator panel, you see we obviously have there's a fire test button. You see it just illuminates that engine fire test in the top left hand corner there, and then an overall lamp test for all the annunciators, and off again. There's a night mode, so you can see it's dimmer. For everything other than the red annunciators get dimmed as per the real aircraft. Back today. Then we have some engine gauges, the torque and MP gauge or prop RPM, and then on the other panel you'll see the other selection of I think it's about 6 gauges: ITT, NG, the oil pressure and temperature are a combined 2-needle instrument. Then fuel flow and a couple of fuel quantity or fuel tank indicators along the top there, like in the 208. A small cluster over to the left here. There's an OAT gauge which is actually up in the roof, I think, in the real aircraft from my research. So again, rather than have that up high, I could have perhaps put that on the overhead, but it's not really on the overhead. It's kind of up, up near the eyebrow or the sun visor type location. So that's just up in the top left-hand corner of the instrument there. There's a tail number instrument, so that will pick up the tail number from the sim, or you can enter your own tail number for that. Prop anti-ice, which will react to when you're switching the anti-ice features on, down at the bottom on that switch panel that we looked at earlier. There's an analog clock. There's a suction gauge for some of these instruments that require a vacuum. And then there's a volt amps, an analog style volt amps gauge with a selector switch here with all of these switches and knobs that can be controlled by Knobster, are obviously Knobster enabled. There's the different gen alt volts. I've done quite a lot of custom logic with the voltage and the switch panel. This is one of the things that's not modelled very well, excuse me. Let's turn that off. And that is with the external power and the starter. So none of that's really modelled in the Caravan aircraft. So I've gone to a lot of trouble to try and get that to work so that the right voltage readings appear at the right time. And if your battery's quite flat, you can switch it on to the bus and you'll get power to be able to power the instruments and whatnot. None of that's in the sim, but all that logic is in this switch panel and the annunciator panel, sort of combined really in terms of the annunciations and the switching and turning the appropriate things on in the sim to make it simulate as if you had ground power plugged in. So then the rest of the instruments, the normal light switch panel below that, and then we go over to the main part of the instrument panel on this left-hand panel, which is got your traditional 6-pack, so airspeed, attitude, altitude. Some reason they've got the turn coordinator below the ADF indicator, but that's okay. That's a HSI in the middle, vertical speed indicator, and a radar altimeter. So all of these, once I say all of these instruments, a lot of these instruments were done from scratch. I still need to do a couple of versions of these couple here. The altimeter is a new instrument, although based on another one that I had. This one's a new instrument. You'll probably recognise the GI 106 that I've shown before. The radar altimeter was a new one which I'd been meaning to do for a while, because I've got a couple of aircraft that need to use that, so that's good. I can reuse that in another panel later on, but I needed it for this Caravan, so that's a new one I created. The airspeed indicator itself is kind of custom for the Caravan, so that one is obviously from scratch. The ADF I had previously and the turn corner I had previously, but I've got these surrounds on them, a little bit different in the Caravan, where they've got these surrounds, so I've had to create these surrounds now for these instruments that these ones sit on, but that wasn't too much of a hassle. One of the newer ones is the altitude selector. I did have a single button version of this. I think it's KS297 from memory. Altitude indicator. You'll see that working in a minute when we switch the Avionics on. That doesn't come on until we switch the Avionics bus on. And the DME indicator, which I've shown before in another aeroplane. So this is the 2-button altitude selector. So the functionality is a little bit different for the autopilot that we've got in this aeroplane. And then down the bottom, some unique things for the Caravan: the dimmer panel, the alternate static, and the parking brake. Oh, and the inertial separator. I forgot to mention that. There's the inertial separator, so that's a brand new instrument as well. So let's flick over. I think that's pretty much everything on that left panel. I'll switch over to the right hand side panel. There we go. So the right hand side panel is sort of to simulate what's in the Caranado model, but I've also done another right hand side panel so I can use my GTNs in that, because I do like to use them, and I know that they're quite popular with a lot of people, the GTNs. Really nice units to use, and obviously a much more modern upgrade for your radio stack in terms of your GPSs and your control of your radios, whereas this is obviously back in time somewhat with the old Bendix King KMA24 audio panel there. You see we have, let's turn the Avionics on temporarily just so we can see this, otherwise there's not much to show here. So switch the Avionics on. Oh, that's not on. So we have an audio panel, which you got the marker beacons there, and the select between COM1 and COM2, the other positions as well, but they don't really do a lot. COM1, COM2, and then the individual selector switches to select the different radios. And then the GNS 430, which we've all seen before, and the Bendix King Navcom, an old style KT76A transponder, then my KR87 ADF unit, which I've shown, I think, as part of the Bendix King showcase before. And then there's another new Bendix King unit that I needed to do for this aircraft, and I've noticed there's a few others that use it, so I'm glad I did it. And I did all 3 variants actually of this autopilot. So there's a, let me get this right, there's a KFC 150, a KAP 150, and then a KAP 100. The 3 different autopilots, very similar to the KAP 140 that I did previously in terms of the different models that they've got for doing different things. So there's a single axis one, and then 2 dual axis units, but there's one of these, the model in this one is the fully capable one that's got the most features, and then they sort of lessen the features as they go down in model. So this is a nice little autopilot, again totally from scratch. So that was took a little bit of time, was a little bit of fun as well doing that. And then down the bottom of the radio stack are the mainly the center pedestal and the miscellaneous type controls that are dotted elsewhere in the aircraft. You always type for room with a lot of these panels, so you can't, you know, you have to use a little bit of poetic license, shall we say, in terms of the location of some of these instruments. You can't always get them exactly where they need to be. In some cases, I guess, and it's something I may consider down the track, that if you want to make something more generic for these out of physical hardware somewhere else on the panel, somewhere more appropriate for them, then these are all individual instruments, so they can be taken off of the actual touch panel if you've got a physical control for them. But at the moment they're there, and you can leave them on there, put them on and off. So I can control those other things, although I do have some buttons for some of these on my flight control, so I don't have to worry too much about all of them, although it is nice to see, for instance, the flaps indicator, and maybe just having a look at the trims, not so much for using them. You can see this one is knobster enabled, so I can adjust the trim, or I can do it from my flight control here. But at least I get to see the indicator, or if the knob is moving, if I'm accidentally trimming or something. And then the rudder trim as well is like a slider. You know, I can adjust the rudder trim, and then the pitch trim is just an indicator. Again, I have a button for that on the, or controls for that on the flight controls. Fuel shut off is self-explanatory. That's just an in-out switch to cut the fuel, and then the flaps. Again, it's nice to be able to see where your flaps are at after you've commanded them, or if you forget where you are at the moment. And then just a simple bleed air heat on and off. And then at the top, forgot to mention the rest of the engine gauges that I mentioned when we were looking at the left-hand side panel. So the rest of the collection of the 8 engine gauges that are used in the Caravan. So while we're here, I guess we can have a look at the autopilot self-test. We push the little test button here, and it will do its little self-test routine. You have to do this before you fly every time after you've cycled the power. Hear the tones and the flashing AP button. And if it's all good, it should all be clear and off. I mean, you can use the flight director, I think, before you do that self-test, but if you're going to activate the surveys, you have to do that test. So there you go. You can activate the individual modes with the buttons. Let's turn that on. That's there. Okay. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention was the ELT. There is a an ELT that I've shown before on a Hobbs. Nothing too fancy there. And the other thing that I wanted to show that I totally forgot about. I'll need to flick back to the other panel for that. Yeah, okay, so the other thing I wanted to show was the radar altimeter. So you could set the bug here using the knobster to do this, 300 feet let's say, and then you push the button on the end of the knob. I'm going to push the button on the end of the knobster here, and you'll see the radar altimeter needle will scroll down and past the bug, and you'll get a tone to tell you that you've reached the decision height, and the decision height light will come on. So a nice little feature that I incorporated from the real instrument. Yeah, so one of the other things I wanted to show was the other right hand side panel that I've also developed, which as you can see is for a couple of GTNs. It's also got the STEC 55 SR55X, should I say, autopilot in there. The rest of it is the same as the one that we looked at previously. It's got the ADF in there as well. So that gives him the ability to fly behind the GTN panel and the overlay that I've developed for that, operating the GTNs. One of the nice features of the GTNs is you can use the output here on the self-test page just after it first boots up, and you can check that your CDI or HSI is working correctly. So you can see here it says on the displays here, half left. The flags are out of view, and the vertical is also half up, so half up and half left. You remember that. We should have the 2 flag as well there, and the OBS is set to 085. If I flick back to the other panel briefly, you can see that on the HSI here, we're on about, what's that, East 90, so we're on about 085, and we can change that while we're here to something else. What's that, around about 120, something like that. But you can see the needle is half left and half up, and we've got a 2 indication. Same with the CDI here, the other one's doing the same, so it's half up, half left, and we've got a 2 indication. That one, the OBS is what, about 130. So we go back to the other panel now, and you can see, yeah, the OBS is on 130 on that number 2, and then on the other one it's now changed to 120 from what we had it before. So as you adjust it, I'll do that, just no, I'm still selected on that here. As I'm adjust it, you can see it changing there, so you can check that that's all working fairly. A nice little feature of the interaction of the GTNs with the HSI and CDIs. So I think we'll go back now to the full panel. Oh, not back to. I don't think we've seen that before or used it before. We'll use the 2-panel view with an outside view, and we'll do a quick engine start just so you can see some of the engine instruments working and see this Caravan. Some of the sounds on the engine start for the Caravan are not actually too bad. So let's just do a quick start, and we'll call that the end of the video after that, I think. So let's get those panels up. So here we are. We're not going to need the avionics on. Start. I was just showing you the GTNs there. So let's have a look at the battery, state of the battery, which I guess has not been too clever because we've been running. No, it's not looking good at all. So I think we need to do an external power, ground power start. Okay, so don't need that one on strobe beacon. That'll do us for now. Make sure that our fuel boost pump is on. Prop full. Ready on the condition lever. Looking for 12% NG. Yeah. So up there, and then on the small needle we'll flick round there. I don't know if you can see that on the video, but up, that's where we are, and then we should get ourselves a start. The starter energized, the annunciator is on, ignition, the annunciator is on, 12%.